Today, I am just outside of Bagdad, Arizona, ready to kick off my next summer adventure.
And over the next 4 parts, I'll be traversing the central and northern portions of the state as I head east from Bagdad all the way to Apache-Made Mountain on the other side of I-17. Along the way, I would stick to mostly high elevation routes, crossing through the Prescott, Kaibab, and Coconino National Forests, as well as the mighty Verde Valley, all of which would be loaded with some tremendous views and vistas. From abandoned mines to historic cabins and structures, this adventure would have no shortage of neat places to explore. The drive would feature a mix of smooth dirt roads, along with some rougher trails thrown in, as I make my way through the heart of Arizona on this 5-day, 250-mile adventure. This is the North Central Arizona Special.
Hello everybody and welcome to another summer special. I'm Scotty, and of course, as you can see, this is going to be another solo trip. Unfortunately, Daniel wasn't able to make it out here this summer. Things have been a little bit hectic and chaotic to say the least, so we're in talks. We're hoping to get him back out end of this year, maybe early next year, but we'll see when the schedules align. But in the meantime, the adventure must continue, and I am kicking off my 5-day adventure across kind of north and central Arizona as I head east from Bagdad here, the small mining town, over to Apache-Made on the other side of I-17. Should be a really great time, lots to see as you saw in the opener, and I'm really excited to be enjoying some cooler weather and a little bit of summer adventure. So I'm going to get aired down here, tell you a little more about the route, and then we'll be underway.
A couple miles outside the mining town of Bagdad, I got to work on airing down the tires. This was a quick process that only took a few minutes. While I waited, I enjoyed the view, which included some grass-covered mesas and rocky outcrops up ahead. When the tires were down to about 15 psi, I was ready to set out. I would be on completely unknown roads as I traversed Camp Wood Road. Today would be spent entirely in the Santa Maria Mountains as I headed northeast. The trail would gradually gain elevation as I reached a spur to the Black Pearl Mine. From there, I would cross into the Prescott National Forest and camp for the night. I would then continue into the Williamson Valley, where a brief highway stretch would take me through Chino Valley and back onto dirt. I would then wind through the Verde Valley, crossing at Perkinsville and completing another brief paved section as I climbed back into the forest and onto the Colorado Plateau. The next 2 days would be heading east through Kaibab and Coconino as I made my way past scenic canyons and meadows before crossing over Highway 89A and I-17. Finally, I would head southeast, reaching Mormon Lake and Stoneman Lake, and ending in the area near Apache-Made Mountain, about 250 miles away from my start point. Now underway, the trail stayed flat and smooth at first. The rolling grasslands soon gave way to rocky hills. It didn't take long and the trail soon began a steady climb. On the other side of the hill, things leveled out briefly and the view instantly improved. This was my first good look at the Santa Maria Mountains, a range filled with boulders and hills, as well as plenty of green vegetation. The trail quickly dropped downhill into Wild Horse Basin and remained fast-moving and in good shape. At the bottom of the hill, I crossed over the quite dry Boulder Creek and resumed a long, steady climb. For the next 6 miles, the trail would climb over 1,300 feet along the edge of Behm Mesa. The road got narrower in places, but was in good condition at first. Each mile further, the view got better and better. It was really incredible. Conditions deteriorated in a few spots and got rocky as the road clung to the side of the volcanic mesa. There were interesting road cuts on one side, and on the other, a healthy drop into the basin below. About 10 miles from the town of Bagdad, the trail came to a split. To the left, Campbellwood Road continued on, which I would take later in the day. To the right here was a spur road to the Black Pearl mine. From this vantage point, a little over a mile up in elevation, the Black Pearl was just visible to my east. I could already see some interesting structures from here, and I was anxious to get closer and check it out further. I stayed right and followed the road as it dropped along the edge of the mesa. It was less traveled than the other road, but generally remained in pretty good shape. At the bottom of the hill, I crossed back over Boulder Creek, which seemed to be a little more true to form here. On the other side, the trail climbed and remained narrow. It soon turned into a gloriously smooth dirt road. I came to an unexpected gate, but luckily it wasn't locked, which was nice. Past here, the road soon deteriorated and was washed out in places. The trail split again at a scenic area known as Bear Flat, and I was now just a mile away from the Black Pearl. From past research, I knew this trail was in rough shape, and I didn't feel like doing any serious damage. It didn't look bad at first, but it would definitely get rougher. I parked the Jeep and put on my hiking boots. I grabbed a camera and my lunch and set out for the Black Pearl. On paper, the hike seemed easy. 1 mile to the mine, 500-foot elevation gain, not too bad. I continued uphill towards the mine and conditions quickly got rougher. Boulders, washouts, and off-camber areas made up the surface. You'll need a pretty capable vehicle to complete this final section of trail. While I think my Jeep probably could do it, I certainly wasn't going to try it fully loaded down and by myself. It was nice to get a little much-needed exercise, and within about half an hour, I crested the hill and arrived at the impressive mine ruins. Perched near the top of Loco Gulch was the Black Pearl Mine, a former tungsten, molybdenite, and iron producer. The expansive tailings pile was dominated by primarily white rocks with a few areas of yellow and red. Numerous structures remained around the property. I grabbed a quick bite to eat before getting on to exploring the ruins. The Black Pearl was first discovered in 1914 by William Connors. Just a year later, it began producing high-grade tungsten ore. From 1915 to 1935, it would produce over 60,000 pounds. Mining methods during this time were crude. All of the work was near the surface and done via a mix of drilling drifts and hand sorting the ore. Nevertheless, it was successful. Interestingly, the mine didn't have any big backers or capital poured into it. Its profits were enough to sustain operations up to this point. In the years following, the mine slipped out of operation as ownership disputes raged on. Shares were sold and the mine ended up in a 50-50 split, with each side disagreeing on how to operate going forward. Meanwhile, the promising mine drew the attention of local investors and companies. By 1951, the Pearl had resumed operations under new ownership. The mine was redeveloped and expanded. In 1953, a road was built from Baghdad and modern equipment was installed. A small mill ran on site to process the ore, which was thought to be around 70,000 tons worth $500,000. However, it seemed like much of the high-grade ore had already been picked out, and the production numbers just weren't sufficient. By fall of 1956, the mine closed again, and the Hillside Mining Company turned its lease back over to private owners. While ownership has changed hands in more recent years, it seems the Black Pearl was not operated any further. I spent a little over an hour walking around the abandoned structures. This included a few outbuildings, some sort of blacksmith shop, and of course, the main attraction, the large headframe. The headframe towers over the ruins of the Black Pearl. It seems like it's seen better days, but it's left relatively intact. The shaft below the headframe, as well as the main adit that goes into the mountainside, were completely filled up with murky-looking water. Other pieces of mining ruins were scattered around the large waste rock pile. The ground, while mostly full of large chunks of rock, were scattered with tons of small shiny pieces of metal. Pyrite, better known as fool's gold, appears to be in no short supply here. However, it was now after 3 p.m. I still had the mile hike back to the Jeep and the short stretch of road back out to Behm Mesa to cover to get back on my route. I left the Black Pearl, which is definitely one of the cooler mines I've been to, and retraced my way downhill. Once back to the Jeep, I was soon loaded up and ready to get back on the road. I proceeded the 2 miles back to the main road. The trail out was quick, mostly smooth, and fun to drive. I soon ended up back on the Shelf Road and made a hard right turn uphill to continue on. From here, the road climbed and was slower going. The surface here was undergoing some kind of maintenance, and a few sections were a little rockier. It didn't take long and the trail soon leveled out and crested the top of the mesa. Conditions were still rocky, but quickly improved as I passed through another gate. From here, the vegetation thinned and gave way to open, grassy areas. I passed through another gate at what seemed to be a pretty active ranching operation. Past the ranch, the road twisted northeast. My pace was slowed through some more rocky sections, but for the most part, these open areas were smooth sailing. It was pretty remote out here, and aside from meeting the local law enforcement, there had been no one else all day. The road crossed into Prescott National Forest, and the pine trees began to make an appearance. I continued northbound. The road then gently dipped into a green valley. Complete with a group of houses and even its own airstrip, I was now passing through an area known as YOLO Ranch. The road turned east and weaved through the trees. It was incredibly scenic through this area as large boulders were just about everywhere amidst the pines. A few miles later, I arrived at another brief historic stop. Camp Wood, the namesake for this road, sits just off County Road 68, and if you're wondering where it is, well, there isn't anything left today. Located on the banks of Pine Creek, Camp Wood was a territorial-era cavalry post. Likely connected somehow with Camp Wallapai further north, not much is known about what happened here. But it was a nice scenic spot. I pressed on from here. My goal was to make camp somewhere in this area. Just a couple miles east along the road, I pulled off onto a lesser trail and quickly found a nice spot. It was just after 6, so there was still plenty of daylight left. After leveling the Jeep, I got to setting things up, which really didn't take long. When this was done, I grabbed my first beer of the trip and sat down to enjoy the view. This was a rather interesting campsite. On one side were gorgeous hills and healthy forest. The other side was burned and otherwise dead. It turns out I was camped right on the edge of the Sheridan fire damage, which burned 20,000 acres of this area last summer. It was eerie but beautiful in its own way, and a great reminder of why I wouldn't be having any campfires this trip due to fire restrictions. The undergrowth is already starting to grow back, but it would take decades to return back to normal. The surrounding views were really gorgeous, and the highest reaches of the Santa Marias rose up in the distance. The flat-topped Cottonwood Mountain sat just to my east. A little before sunset, I fired up the stove to get started on dinner. Tonight, it would be a chicken quesadilla. I started off by cooking my fresh flour tortilla. Annoyingly, it didn't quite fit in my pan. Next up, it was chicken time. I got that warmed and seasoned. Finally, I combined everything back in the pan for the final melting phase. It smelled fantastic, and within minutes was ready to go. Paired up with another beer, I sat down to enjoy this delicious meal. I watched the sun fade from the sky as the surrounding terrain slipped into darkness. Today had been a great day. I covered some new ground and, with a hike earlier, was a tad more exhausted than normal. It didn't take long and I was soon up in the tent. I enjoyed the starry sky for a while, but by 9:30, I had fallen asleep. Tomorrow would be another busy day, and I wanted to make sure I was ready for it. Tune in next time as I continue my journey through north central Arizona. On the longest day of my trip, I'll cover 130 miles, heading east and descending towards Perkinsville. In the Verde Valley, I'll be treated to some big views before crossing the lush Verde River. past the river, I'll climb back into the forest and visit some scenic overlooks. I'll drive on a variety of roads, through Garland Prairie, and towards my ultimate destination for the night, the end of the world.